A man about to be silenced by death, a nation on the edge of total collapse, a message that would echo through the ages. Imagine witnessing the moment when God reveals the greatest mystery in history and chooses one single man to record it all. Have you ever wondered why, out of the 66 books of the Bible, Isaiah is considered the most astonishing? Why he was called the evangelist of the Old Testament? Why his words echoed so powerfully that Jesus himself quoted him more than any other? Today, you'll hear something that will forever change the way you read the Bible. Get ready, because what you are about to hear is not just history, it's a divine code reserved for our generation. A book that foretold the virgin birth 700 years in advance, that described the crucifixion with chilling accuracy, and that drew the most precise portrait of the Messiah. This content is free, but the impact it can have on your life is massive. If this message touched your heart, respond with a simple gesture. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. That way, we can keep spreading the word every day. And what if I told you that Isaiah didn't just speak of the past, but also brought warnings and promises for our times? Do you know why scholars call Isaiah the fifth gospel? Because it contains 66 chapters, just like the 66 books of the Bible. The first 39 speak of judgment like the Old Testament, and the last 27 of hope like the New Testament. Coincidence? Impossible. What you are about to discover will take your breath away, because Isaiah contains prophecies so precise, so supernatural, that skeptics have tried for centuries to explain them, and failed every single time. Get ready for a journey that will transform your faith, because by the end of this story, you will never see the Bible the same way again. That year, Jerusalem was shrouded in shadows. The death of King Uzziah had cast a deep wave of fear and insecurity across the entire kingdom of Judah. In the streets, panic flowed like water, silent, yet visible in the eyes of every person. The king had ruled for 52 long years, bringing prosperity and safety, but now his death seemed to announce a dark and uncertain time. Isaiah, a young priest from an honored lineage, watched it all with growing concern. He had grown up hearing stories of God's greatness, witnessing the temple rituals since childhood, but now it seemed Jerusalem had lost its way. Corruption and idolatry had begun to seep into the very heart of the holy city. Nobles and priests, who were meant to be examples of righteousness, now sought only their own gain. Isaiah felt deeply troubled. Sitting in a small chamber near the temple, Isaiah meditated in silence. The wind howled, slamming the windows with force, as if warning of what was to come. He felt that something was about to change drastically, though he couldn't say exactly what. His heart was restless, filled with a mix of fear and anticipation. Suddenly, the door burst open, shattering the silence. "Brother Isaiah! Brother Isaiah!" shouted Jeremiah, his close friend. "Have you heard the news? The borders are under threat. The Assyrians are marching against us. They say with Uzziah dead, we are easy prey." Isaiah took a deep breath before answering. "And our people, Jeremiah, how are they reacting?" Jeremiah lowered his head, dejected, desperate, lost. Some speak of forming alliances with nations that worship other gods. Isaiah's expression grew even darker. "Jeremiah, our salvation does not lie in human alliances. We must return to the God of our fathers." Jeremiah looked deeply into Isaiah's eyes. "But who will listen in times like these? Who will hear your words?" Isaiah remained silent for a moment, gazing at the horizon where dark clouds began to gather. "Perhaps no one will hear me now, but someone must speak. Someone must remind our people who the true king is." Jeremiah nodded, moved by his friend's unwavering conviction. Later, walking toward the temple, Isaiah saw men arguing anxiously in the streets, and women weeping for their sons, who might soon be called to war. An elderly priest approached with a disheartened look. "Young Isaiah, do you truly believe God still hears us? Look around you. God has abandoned us." Isaiah replied calmly but firmly, God would never abandon us. We are the ones who have turned away from him." The old man shook his head in disbelief and slowly walked away. Upon entering the temple, a heavy silence hung in the air, almost tangible. Isaiah approached the altar, knelt slowly, and began to pray. "God of our fathers, we are lost. Our nation is drifting from your law. Our hope is fading. Where else can we look but to you?" As he prayed, Isaiah felt a strong wind sweep through the temple, gently shaking the sacred veil. An indescribable presence began to fill the space, intense and overwhelming. A radiant light emerged from behind the veil, piercing through him with a brilliance too great to endure. Isaiah's eyes filled with tears, his body trembled uncontrollably. "Lord," he cried with a trembling voice, "what am I seeing?" A voice resounded deep and majestic. "Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. The whole earth is full of his glory." Isaiah fell to the ground, unable to withstand the force of the vision. Feeling completely unclean and unworthy, he cried out in despair, "I am ruined, for I am a man of unclean lips, and I live among a people of unclean lips. And my eyes have seen the King, the Lord of hosts." A celestial being swiftly flew to the altar, taking a burning coal with tongs. Isaiah felt his heart pounding. The being approached with calm and mercy, reaching out the coal toward the young priest's lips. "Do not fear, Isaiah," the celestial being said in a gentle yet firm voice. "This coal has touched your lips. Your guilt is taken away. Your sin is forgiven." The pain Isaiah felt was deep, burning, but liberating. Then the divine voice echoed again throughout the temple. "Whom shall I send? Who will go for us?" Isaiah slowly raised his head. Even knowing the trials he would face, he felt compelled to answer. With resolve, he lifted his voice. "Here I am, Lord. Send me." Yet little did he know that what he saw in that temple would haunt him for the rest of his life. Isaiah remained kneeling on the cold temple floor, his heart racing, his mind in absolute turmoil. His lips still burned from the touch of the heavenly coal, but now a new reality unfolded before his eyes, one far beyond any human understanding. Everything around him seemed to vibrate. The ground, the walls, even the air itself pulsed with an indescribable force. A light so intense appeared before him that Isaiah had to cover his eyes with his hands, unable to bear the blinding brightness. Through the gaps between his trembling fingers, he began to perceive extraordinary details. Before him stood a majestic throne, high and exalted, radiating a pure and penetrating light. Seated on the throne was the Lord, a vast, immeasurable figure whose face could not be beheld, so great was his glory. Around the throne, celestial beings with 6 wings flew continuously. Isaiah watched, both fascinated and terrified, as 2 wings covered their faces, 2 their feet, and with the other 2 they hovered in the air. A deep and powerful melody echoed throughout the temple, repeating without ceasing, "Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. The whole earth is full of his glory." The voice of these beings resonated deep within the prophet's soul, causing every fiber of his body to tremble. The entire temple seemed to quake under the intensity of that divine proclamation, while smoke began to fill the space, partially clouding his vision. Overwhelmed by fear, Isaiah began to murmur to himself, "How can I be here? This is too much for any man to bear." With every repetition of the celestial chant, his heart sank deeper into the painful awareness of his own impurity. It wasn't just fear. It was an overwhelming sense of shame in the face of divine perfection. He bowed his head, a tear slowly tracing down his cheek and falling onto the temple floor. "I am ruined," he whispered, trembling under the weight of that terrifying revelation. "I am unworthy of this. I do not deserve to witness such glory. I am a man of unclean lips, and I live among a people of unclean lips." Isaiah pressed his hands to his chest, trying to ease the suffocating weight pressing down on him. His breathing grew difficult, his body weakening under the magnitude of the vision. "Why have you brought me here, Lord?" he groaned, feeling completely unable to withstand such holiness. As he remained kneeling, the voice that echoed throughout the temple seemed to intensify even more. The young priest realized that the very foundations of the temple were trembling beneath the force of the celestial proclamation. Isaiah began to sob deeply, recognizing the gravity of his own condition before the perfect holiness that surrounded him. "There is no salvation for me here," he whispered, desperate. "I am before the living God. No mortal can survive his presence." Suddenly, a shadow fell over Isaiah, interrupting his despairing thoughts. He slowly lifted his head and saw one of the seraphim swiftly approaching. His heart pounded and fear overtook him, convinced that this moment would be his end. The celestial being held something in his hands. Isaiah tried to identify it, and his heart nearly stopped when he realized what it was: a burning coal taken directly from the heavenly altar. The searing glow of the ember seemed to light up the entire temple, casting dancing shadows on the smoke-filled walls. The celestial being came closer, his piercing eyes fixed on the trembling prophet. "No, Lord, I cannot bear this," Isaiah pleaded, trying in vain to retreat. The being landed gently before him, holding the glowing coal firmly in one hand. His eyes radiated calm and assurance. "Isaiah," said the celestial being with a deep and comforting voice, "this coal will touch your lips to purify you. Do not be afraid." Before Isaiah could react, he felt the searing heat of the coal touch his lips. The intense pain was mixed with an indescribable sense of relief and cleansing. He cried out, not from the physical pain, but from the overwhelming shock. The celestial being smiled gently as he withdrew the coal from Isaiah's lips. "Your guilt has been removed. Your sin is forgiven." Still stunned by the intensity of the moment, Isaiah slowly lifted his eyes to the glorious throne before him. He felt incredibly light, as if a crushing burden had been completely lifted from his heart. Then a powerful and profound voice resounded once again, this time with a clarity that could not be ignored. "Whom shall I send, and who will go for us?" The divine voice seemed to penetrate Isaiah's very bones, filling him with supernatural conviction. Without thinking of any future consequences, Isaiah responded immediately, his voice firm and resolute. "Here am I, Lord, send me." But even as he spoke those words, a chill ran down his spine. Something inside him whispered clearly that his life would never be the same. He had no idea of the pain, rejection, and trials that still awaited him. The intense light slowly began to fade, and Isaiah realized that the vision was coming to an end. But before he could breathe a sigh of relief, a sudden wave of deep anguish washed over him. Something was still hidden, something he would have to carry for a long time. Just when he thought the experience was over, a new and terrifying image began to form slowly before his eyes. And when Isaiah thought he would die, something completely unexpected happened. The heat still burned on Isaiah's lips. Even after the celestial being had withdrawn with the burning coal, the sensation of fire remained, pulsing intensely. It was a pain mixed with a strange sense of relief, as if, with every passing second, something impure was being torn from within him. Isaiah remained kneeling, eyes closed, breathing heavily. His body trembled. His hands, resting on the cold temple floor, could barely support his weight. It was as if he stood between life and death, between the human and the divine. A soft, yet firm voice broke the silence. "Rise, Isaiah." He opened his eyes with effort. Before him, still hovering in the air, was the seraph who had touched his lips. The light surrounding him was less blinding now, but the glory of the place remained undeniable. "Your guilt has been removed," the celestial being repeated. "Your sin has been forgiven." Isaiah, his voice hoarse, asked, "Why? Why me? I am nothing more than a fragile man, a sinner." The seraph only smiled, as if the answer were too obvious to be spoken. Then the atmosphere began to vibrate once more. A voice, more powerful, more majestic than any Isaiah had ever heard, echoed through the walls of the temple. "Whom shall I send, and who will go for us?" Isaiah felt his heart stop for a moment. The question seemed to float in the air, awaiting a response, as if the universe itself waited on the decision of a single man. He looked around, as if searching for someone else who might take on such a responsibility. But the temple was empty, save for the celestial beings and the overwhelming presence of God. I am here!" His voice came out weak at first, but then gained strength, as if a new vigor was rising from within. "Here am I! Send me!" The words left his lips before he could even reflect on the consequences. It was an impulse, a deep inner certainty, a response not born of the mind, but of the soul. For a brief moment, silence fell. Not even the seraphim sang. Only the sound of Isaiah's heavy breathing filled the air. Suddenly, the light around the throne grew brighter. It was as if heaven itself was responding to his answer. The celestial being before him drew closer once more, looking him in the eyes with a gaze that held both compassion and solemnity. "Then listen carefully, Isaiah," he said. "The path you have chosen will not be easy. Your words will be like hammers breaking stone, but they will strike hearts of stone. You will speak to the people, but they will shut their ears. You will prophesy, but they will not believe." Isaiah furrowed his brow, confused. "Lord, how long will this go on? Until when will they not listen?" The answer came like thunder, rumbling through the temple walls. "Until the cities lie ruined and without inhabitant, until the houses are deserted and the fields desolate, until the Lord drives the people far away, and the land is left utterly forsaken." Isaiah's blood ran cold. His hands began to tremble again. He sensed that the mission was far greater, far heavier than he had ever imagined. The celestial being then made a gesture toward him. "But Isaiah, even in the midst of destruction, a remnant will remain, a stump, a holy seed will survive." Isaiah took a deep breath, trying to absorb it all. He felt small, powerless, yet at the same time a new fire began to burn in his chest, a fire that no rejection, no pain, and no future suffering could extinguish. Still on his knees, he closed his eyes for a moment, preparing himself spiritually for what was to come. When he opened his eyes again, the temple seemed to have returned to normal. There was no more smoke, no visible seraphim, no radiant light. But Isaiah knew his life would never be the same. He stood slowly, looking toward the altar with a mixture of awe and reverence. As he stepped out of the temple, the first rays of sunlight pierced through the clouds, as if the heavens were whispering to him, "This is only the beginning." Isaiah took a few steps outside and, looking toward the city, saw the people going about their routines, completely unaware of the supernatural experience he had just lived. Jeremiah, his friend, spotted him from afar and ran to him. "Isaiah, where were you? You look different." Isaiah, his eyes still glowing with emotion, simply smiled, took a deep breath and replied, "Jeremiah, I believe God has given me a mission." Jeremiah stared at him, startled. "What kind of mission?" Isaiah looked to the horizon, his expression serious. "A mission that will hurt more than I can imagine," he answered without hesitation, unaware of just how painful his mission would truly be. Before we continue, we ask for your support. Subscribe to the channel and leave a like to help us keep bringing deep Bible stories like Isaiah's to more and more hearts. Now, let's continue with the journey of this prophet who saw the future through eyes of faith. Isaiah walked slowly through the streets of Jerusalem, feeling the weight of the mission he had just received. Each step seemed to carry the echo of the divine voice still ringing in his mind. "Go and tell this people." But what God had said afterward left the young prophet with a heavy heart. "Jeremiah," said Isaiah, calling out to his friend as he approached a small square where some men were arguing about politics and war. "I need to tell you something." Jeremiah turned quickly. "You're still not yourself, Isaiah. Ever since that morning in the temple, your eyes have changed. What happened?" Isaiah took a deep breath, as if drawing courage from the depths of his soul. "God called me, but..." He hesitated for a moment. "He also revealed to me that the people will not listen to me." "What do you mean?" asked Jeremiah, frowning. God said they will have ears, but not hear, eyes, but not see. Their hearts will become hardened. Jeremiah fell silent for a few seconds, as if trying to process what he had just heard. So, you're saying God is sending you to preach, already knowing that no one will listen? Exactly, Isaiah replied, his gaze sorrowful. My mission is to proclaim, Jeremiah, even if no one wants to hear. His friend ran a hand through his hair, confused. That makes no sense, Isaiah. Why would God do that? Isaiah sighed deeply. Because even in the midst of rejection, there is a greater purpose. A remnant will be saved. A holy seed will remain. The two walked in silence until they reached the entrance of the marketplace. There, Isaiah saw a group of religious leaders, the same ones he had seen many times in the temple. Approaching cautiously, Isaiah raised his voice. O people of Jerusalem, thus says the Lord, listen closely, but do not understand. Look clearly, but do not perceive. Some men stopped to listen. Others simply shook their heads, laughing with disdain. Another prophet with words of doom, one of them muttered. We don't need prophets, we need soldiers, shouted another. Isaiah, his gaze fixed and full of determination, continued, Harden the hearts of this people, O Lord. Shut their ears, blind their eyes, until the cities lie in ruins, until the fields are laid waste. Silence fell over the square for a few seconds, but soon laughter and insults began again. Go away, Isaiah, shouted an elderly man. We don't need your threats. Jeremiah approached his friend, grabbing him by the arm. Let's go, Isaiah. They're not ready to listen. As they walked away, Isaiah suddenly stopped and looked back. Something inside him told him that this initial rejection was only the beginning of a long and painful road. That night, back in his small home, Isaiah knelt and prayed, Lord, how long? How long will I preach and not be heard? How long will I watch my people drift further and further from you? The answer came as a deep whisper in his mind. Until the land is devastated, until chaos covers the cities, until only a burned stump remains. But from that stump, life will rise again. Isaiah slowly opened his eyes, feeling a mix of fear and hope. Days later, the news began to arrive. Enemy troops advancing, hunger, injustice rising in the streets. The words Isaiah had prophesied were beginning to come true before his very eyes. And still, the people remained indifferent. One morning, while passing through the marketplace, Isaiah heard a group of women weeping. Another village was destroyed, one of them lamented. Isaiah clenched his fists. They must hear, they must understand, he muttered to himself. Jeremiah appeared from around a corner. Isaiah, are you going to keep going? Until my last breath, he answered, resolute. Isaiah knew his journey would be marked by pain, rejection, and solitude. But something inside him told him that God's purpose was greater than he could possibly understand at that moment. But the greatest revelation of all was still to come. Days in Jerusalem had become more tense. Each morning brought bad news, battles lost, failed political alliances, hunger in nearby villages. Isaiah walked the streets, observing the weary faces of his people. He knew his mission was to proclaim, even if no one listened, but that didn't lessen the weight in his heart. One cloudy afternoon, Isaiah was summoned to the royal palace. King Ahaz, now on the throne, appeared insecure, hesitant, and overcome with fear. The threat of invasion from the kingdoms of Israel and Syria had driven the monarch into panic. Upon entering the throne room, Isaiah immediately sensed the tension. Armed guards, murmuring advisors, pale faces filled with worry. Isaiah! The king called out in desperation. What does your God say about all of this? We're surrounded by enemies. My heart is consumed by fear. Isaiah took a deep breath. He closed his eyes for a brief moment, drawing strength. Then he stepped closer to the king. Hear me, O house of David. Do not fear the two smoldering stubs of firewood, those kings of Syria and Israel, he began with a firm voice. King Ahaz looked at him anxious. But how can I not be afraid? They are already at our gates. Isaiah remained unmoved. God will give you a sign, something that will prove he is still in control. He paused briefly and looked straight into the king's eyes. "Behold, the virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and shall call his name Emmanuel." A heavy silence fell over the room. "What?" asked Ahaz, visibly confused. "A virgin conceiving? That's impossible." The advisors around him began to murmur, exchanging doubtful glances. "This makes no sense," whispered one. "Isaiah, you speak in riddles," said another, irritated. Jeremiah, who had accompanied Isaiah to the palace, stepped closer and whispered, "Isaiah, are you sure of what you heard?" Isaiah nodded firmly. "Absolutely." While the men in the room questioned, laughed, and mocked the prophecy, Isaiah stood still. His gaze was fixed on something far beyond human understanding. "Emmanuel," he repeated softly, almost like a prayer. As they left the palace, Jeremiah walked beside Isaiah, still stunned. "A virgin? How can that happen?" Isaiah stopped and turned to his friend. "I don't know, Jeremiah. I don't understand how. But I know this is what God revealed, and I know that one day that child will be born." "But the people," Jeremiah insisted, "they hardly believe what you already say. How can they possibly accept something like this?" Isaiah looked up at the sky, now covered in gray clouds. "I don't understand it all either, my friend, but I know I must speak." In the days that followed, the news of the prophecy spread quickly. Wherever he went, Isaiah heard the comments. "A son from a virgin. Madness," some said. "Now the prophet is truly delusional," others mocked. There were laughs, sarcasm, even direct insults. One morning, as he walked toward the temple, Isaiah was approached by a group of young men. "Hey, prophet," one of them shouted, "when's your Emmanuel coming? We get it. You love metaphors, right?" Isaiah stopped, looking at them calmly. "Laugh today, mock now, but the words of the Lord do not fail." The group burst into laughter as they walked away. Back in his home, Isaiah knelt again, as he had done so many times before. "Lord, why do you show me things my mind cannot grasp? Why do you make me proclaim a sign so mysterious?" The silence of the night was his only answer. And then, as he sat there with eyes closed and a heavy heart, Isaiah had another brief vision. A woman bathed in light, her belly growing, and a child in her arms. "Emmanuel," he whispered, tears streaming down his face. The image vanished as quickly as it had appeared. Isaiah remained motionless, struggling to breathe. "This defies all human logic," he whispered as tears continued to fall. Isaiah realized that what he had seen defied all human logic. The weeks following the revelation of the sign of Emmanuel were even more challenging for Isaiah. Tension in Jerusalem was rising like a storm about to break. Enemies surrounded the borders, and fear had taken hold of everyone. Even so, Isaiah rose every morning with the same conviction: to deliver the message of hope that God had entrusted to him. On a cold morning, Isaiah stood in the central square of the city. There, merchants were setting up their stalls, and citizens wandered about, discussing the latest military threats. Isaiah raised his voice with conviction. "Hear me, people of Judah. Do not let fear consume you. The Lord himself will give you a sign. The virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and he shall be called Emmanuel, God with us." Some people stopped to listen. Others simply walked on, shaking their heads in disapproval. From the crowd, a man shouted mockingly, "Ah, the dreaming prophet returns with his messages of doom and impossible promises." Another man, with a bitter expression, added, "Emmanuel, what kind of God allows such suffering to fall upon us?" Isaiah, undeterred, continued, "Even in the midst of despair, there is hope. This child will be a sign that God has not abandoned us. Even when there is silence, even when everything around us screams defeat, God is with us." Jeremiah, always nearby, came closer and whispered, "Isaiah, don't you see that the more you speak, the more hatred you stir? They look at you with contempt." Isaiah closed his eyes briefly. "I know, Jeremiah, but if God told me to speak, I will speak. Even if no one believes, his word does not return empty." That night, Isaiah gathered his family at home. With his wife and children around him, he spoke with emotion thick in his voice. "My children, I know many laugh at me. They say I'm mad, but I want you to know I believe every word the Lord has given me. One day, this child, this Emmanuel, will be born, and he will change everything." His wife, always quiet, gently touched his hand. "I believe you, my love." Isaiah smiled, his eyes brimming with tears. Days later, a group of religious leaders came looking for Isaiah at the temple. Their faces were stern, almost hostile. "Isaiah," said the eldest among them, "we can't allow you to keep spreading false hope among the people. We are already suffering enough." "These words are not mine," Isaiah replied firmly. "They are from the Lord of hosts. If he sent me to proclaim hope, that is what I will do." The man snorted in anger. "Then may your God protect you, because the people are tired of empty promises." As the leaders walked away, Isaiah remained there, alone in the temple, his eyes fixed on the altar. "Lord, I am tired. My heart aches, but I will not back down." That night, Isaiah had a brief dream. In the dream, he saw a small boy running among the olive trees with a peaceful smile and a serenity that seemed to wrap around everything. "Emmanuel," he whispered as he awoke, his face wet with tears. But even in that image of hope, Isaiah sensed that there was something greater, something still hidden from his understanding. The sign of the Virgin was only the beginning, but it was only a sign. The greatest mystery remained hidden. The days dragged on, and Jerusalem remained submerged in uncertainty. Military threats were increasing, and hunger was beginning to invade the poorest homes. The people walked the streets with their heads down, their eyes dull, carrying on their backs the heavy weight of hopelessness. Isaiah, however, remained steadfast. Every morning, before the sun had even risen, he climbed one of the hills near the city to pray. "Lord," he whispered, his eyes lifted to the still dark sky, "your people are weary. We are on the verge of collapse. We need a word, a sign, a light." That morning, while still on his knees, something extraordinary happened. Isaiah felt his body tremble. A new vision filled his mind. It was as if the heavens had opened before him. He saw a child, but not an ordinary child. There was a special glow around him, as though the very glory of God rested upon that small figure. A heavenly voice echoed, "For unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given, and the government shall be upon his shoulders, and his name shall be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace." Isaiah opened his eyes, startled. His heart raced. "A Prince of Peace," he whispered, still trying to grasp the meaning of what he had just seen. Without wasting a moment, Isaiah descended the hill and ran through the streets of Jerusalem. He found a small group gathered at the entrance to the marketplace, and without hesitation began to proclaim, "Listen, people of Judah, there is hope. The Lord has revealed to me that a child will be born. He will bring government, justice, and everlasting peace. His name shall be Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace." People stopped, some curious, others skeptical. A middle-aged man dressed as a merchant crossed his arms and shouted, "Another child, Isaiah. Wasn't the story of Emmanuel enough? And now you come with yet another prophecy?" A woman holding her small child in her arms asked hesitantly, "When, Isaiah? When will this child be born? We're tired of waiting." Isaiah took a deep breath. "I don't know when, but I know that God fulfills what he promises." Jeremiah, always at his side, pulled him into a corner. "Isaiah, do you realize what you're doing? Every new word you speak seems to divide the people even more. Some are starting to believe, but many others are turning against you." "I know, Jeremiah, but the message is not mine." Isaiah clenched his fist firmly. "I cannot remain silent." That night, lying on his small bed, Isaiah could barely sleep. The words of the vision echoed endlessly in his mind. "Prince of Peace, Mighty God, Everlasting Father." "Lord, how can a simple child bear such grand titles?" he asked in prayer. "Who will this son be? How will we recognize him?" The following days were even more difficult. Each time Isaiah rose to speak in public, the tension grew. Some religious leaders began to spread rumors that he was going mad. They claimed his visions were just the result of exhaustion and despair. One afternoon, Isaiah was walking through the temple corridors when he was approached by a group of priests. "Isaiah," said the eldest in a tone of authority, "we want you to stop speaking about these children. You're confusing the people." "Confusing," Isaiah replied, his eyes filled with determination. "I am proclaiming the truth. God is speaking." "Truth?" mocked another priest. "What kind of God promises salvation through a child? Where is the army? Where is the strength we need?" Isaiah took a deep breath. "It's not by armies, nor by human strength," he answered. "God's answer will come in a way you do not expect." The priests walked away laughing, while Isaiah stood there, eyes fixed on the altar, his heart heavy. That same night, while praying at home, Isaiah had another brief vision. He saw crowds of people, not just Israelites, but people from many nations, speaking different languages and coming from different cultures, all walking toward a great light on the horizon. "The people who walked in darkness have seen a great light," he whispered, repeating the words forming in his mind. The next day, he returned to the central square and proclaimed, "The people who walked in darkness will see a great light. Those who dwell in the land of the shadow of death, upon them the light of the Lord will shine." But, as before, many ignored him. Others laughed. Some, more enraged, began throwing stones at him. Isaiah dodged and, protected by Jeremiah, managed to flee through the narrow alleys of Jerusalem. Once safely home, he fell to his knees. "Lord, how will all this happen? When? Where? Who will this child be? How will the people believe?" Once again, silence seemed to answer. A mixture of hope and confusion filled the prophet's heart. Isaiah knew he was in the midst of something far greater than he could comprehend, but the true meaning of it all was still hidden from his eyes. Isaiah did not yet fully understand how this would change everything. The light of hope Isaiah carried after the vision of the Prince of Peace was beginning to dim under the weight of the new messages God entrusted to him. The words now coming to his heart were sharp, cutting like a double-edged sword. There were no more promises of immediate comfort. Now, what God wanted him to proclaim was judgment. The next morning, Isaiah walked to the temple entrance with a pale face and hollow eyes from countless nights spent weeping in silence. "Jeremiah," he called to his friend, his voice trembling. "Today, the words the Lord has given me are too heavy." Jeremiah looked at him with concern. "More judgment, Isaiah." The prophet only nodded, taking a deep breath before raising his voice to all who passed along the temple steps. "O house of Israel, O Judah, thus says the Lord of hosts, woe to Assyria, the rod of my anger. With it I will strike down rebellious nations. And as for you, people of Jerusalem, your arrogance will be brought low. The proud will be humbled, and the land will be laid waste." People paused for a moment. A strange silence hovered in the air, but murmurs soon followed. "He's finally lost his mind," said one of the elders. "Always that voice of condemnation. Where is the God of mercy our ancestors worshipped?" Another mocked. Isaiah stepped down from the stairs, walking through the streets as he continued to proclaim, "Cities will be devastated, trees will be felled, vineyards destroyed. The pride of Judah will be crushed. You trust in human alliances, in your armies? Know this, the day will come when your warriors will flee without looking back." Jeremiah walked beside him, his head lowered. "Isaiah, they won't listen. They don't want to listen." "I know," the prophet replied, his voice heavy. "But I cannot remain silent." That night, Isaiah barely slept. Kneeling on the cold floor in prayer, he cried out, "Lord, how long must I proclaim judgment and destruction? How long must I see closed faces, deaf ears, and hardened hearts?" And as a response, another vision appeared before his weary eyes. He saw scorched lands, homes reduced to dust, children crying in the streets, mothers mourning, and priests with torn garments sitting in the ashes. This is the price of disobedience," he murmured as tears streamed down his cheeks. The next day, during a small gathering with a group of farmers, Isaiah tried to warn them. "Your fields will be seized, your harvests destroyed. The enemy will come like a swarm of locusts. Hear the voice of the Lord while there is still time." One of the men stood up angrily. "Silence, prophet! Our problems are political, not spiritual. We don't want to hear your threats anymore." Isaiah stood firm. "You may silence me, but you cannot silence the voice of God." Jeremiah once again pulled him away, afraid Isaiah would be stoned on the spot. As they walked through the narrow alleys, Isaiah suddenly stopped. His eyes were fixed on something only he could see. "Jeremiah, I love them. I love this people, but their hearts are so hardened," Isaiah said with a broken voice. "How can I bear to witness all of this and not be able to stop it?" "You've done everything you could," Jeremiah replied, placing a hand on his friend's shoulder. "All that's left now is to pray." Isaiah nodded, but the weight of the mission was nearly unbearable. That night, in silence, he once again isolated himself in the temple, kneeling near the altar. "Lord, my heart is broken. The words you give me are heavy as stones." "How long? How long?" A strong wind blew through the temple curtains. Isaiah felt a chill run down his spine. God had shown him the consequences of disobedience, but the prophet sensed that the suffering to come would not be the people's alone. He himself would still face pain he could not yet imagine. Isaiah wondered if he could bear any more, unaware that the greatest pain was still to come. Weeks passed, and Isaiah's heart remained in constant conflict. The weight of the prophecies of judgment still consumed him, but in the midst of the pain, a new vision began to emerge during his early morning prayers. It was a cold morning. The wind cut through the streets of Jerusalem as Isaiah once again climbed the hill where he often sought answers. He knelt on the dry ground, hands lifted toward the sky. "Lord, how long will I see only destruction? How long will you show me only judgment?" As he prayed, his eyes closed, and then a new scene began to form before him. It was not a vision of war, nor of ruin, but of a man of humble appearance with a marked face, shoulders bent as if carrying an invisible burden. Isaiah squinted, trying to see more clearly. "Who is this?" he whispered as the vision became clearer. A soft, yet firm voice echoed in his mind. "Here is my servant whom I uphold, my chosen one in whom my soul delights. I will put my spirit upon him, and he will bring justice to the nations." Isaiah opened his eyes, breathing rapidly. Sweat dripped from his forehead despite the morning chill. "A servant?" he murmured, rising slowly. "Who is this man?" That very day, as he walked through the narrow streets of the city, Isaiah passed familiar faces. Some looked at him with disdain, others with pity. He knew his reputation among the people was increasingly damaged, but in that moment, none of it mattered. His mind was completely consumed by the image of the servant. Upon meeting Jeremiah again, Isaiah decided to share what he had seen. "Jeremiah, I had another vision." "Another one?" his friend asked with a worried look. "Yes, but this time it was different. It wasn't about war or judgment. It was about a man, a servant." Jeremiah frowned. "A servant? Who?" "I don't know." Isaiah shook his head, clearly confused, but he was special. There was something divine about him, and at the same time, such deep humility. And what was he doing? Isaiah took a deep breath. He brought justice, but without shouting, without raising his voice in the streets. He didn't break a bruised reed nor snuff out a smoldering wick. He carried suffering, as if it were his own. Jeremiah was silent for a moment, taking in every word. "Isaiah, do you think this man is already among us?" "I don't know," the prophet replied, looking toward the horizon. "But I feel his mission will be greater than anything I've ever declared." In the days that followed, Isaiah began writing down the words coming to his mind, almost as a release. Listen to me, you islands. Hear this, you distant nations. The Lord called me from the womb, from the body of my mother. He named me." He paused, taking a deep breath, feeling the weight of each word his pen released. "From the womb," he whispered, "a chosen one, from before birth." One afternoon, while crossing the marketplace, a young man approached with a mocking tone. "Hey, prophet, now you're talking about a mysterious servant. Who's next? An invisible king? An army of angels?" Laughter erupted around him. Isaiah said nothing, but inside, the inner conflict grew. That night, lying in bed, Isaiah couldn't sleep. The images from the vision haunted him, the face of that servant, the look of compassion, the expression of suffering and determination at once. He rose and walked to the small table where he kept his scrolls and began writing again. "I have made you a light to the Gentiles, that you may bring my salvation to the ends of the earth." Isaiah paused for a moment, staring at the phrase, "a light to the Gentiles." That was unimaginable. Salvation, not just for Israel. He ran his hands over his face, trying to sort through his thoughts. "What does all this mean, Lord? Who is this servant? Why does he carry so much suffering?" A chill ran down his spine. For the first time, Isaiah had the impression that the story being revealed to him went far beyond his understanding. Isaiah was on the verge of discovering something that would change everything he believed. Little by little, Isaiah's words about the servant began to echo more loudly through the streets of Jerusalem. But instead of bringing comfort, they stirred confusion, irritation, and above all, rejection. On a cloudy morning, Isaiah stood at one of the busiest street corners in the city. His voice rang firm, yet heavy with sorrow. "Listen, O house of Israel, the Lord has revealed his servant, a man of sorrows, acquainted with suffering, despised and rejected by men." Passers-by stopped for a moment. Some looked with disdain, others with indifference. "There he goes again," muttered a merchant. "Always speaking of suffering. Who wants to hear about that? We want to hear about victory, about salvation, not about pain." Isaiah continued, ignoring the piercing gazes around him. "The servant will offer his back to those who strike him, and his cheeks to those who pull out his beard. He will not hide his face from insults or spit. He will be humiliated, yet he will not open his mouth to defend himself." Suddenly, a stone flew and hit the ground just beside his feet. "Enough, Isaiah," shouted a man with hatred in his eyes. "I'm done with your words of doom." Other voices joined in. "Shut up, prophet of sorrow. Why would God choose a weak man to be his servant? We want a liberator, a warrior." Isaiah felt his chest tighten. Even surrounded by the crowd, the weight of solitude pressed heavier than ever before. Later that afternoon, as he returned home, Isaiah was met with something that hurt even deeper. His own cousin Eliab, whom he had grown up with and shared many memories, was waiting for him at the door. "Isaiah," Eliab began, glancing around to make sure no one was listening, "I've come to ask you, please, stop this." "Stop?" Isaiah responded, his voice breaking. "People are saying you've gone mad. No one wants to do business with our family anymore. My daughters are being avoided by their friends. Our relatives, they're ashamed of your name." Isaiah lowered his head. The blow cut deep. "Eliab, I didn't choose this, but God chose me. I can't stay silent." His cousin clenched his fists in frustration. "Then bear the consequences alone. Don't count on me anymore." Without waiting for a reply, Eliab turned and walked away. Jeremiah, who had watched from a distance, approached. "Isaiah, even your family now?" "Even them," Isaiah replied, eyes filled with tears. That night, Isaiah withdrew into the temple. He fell to his knees before the altar and cried out, "Lord, how long? How long will I be mocked? How long will I be rejected by those I love?" As he wept, a new vision began to take shape. This time, the servant was even clearer. Isaiah saw the gentle-eyed man being shoved, beaten, spat upon. The servant remained silent, enduring every blow without retaliation. Isaiah cried out in agony, "Why? Why so much suffering? Who is this man, Lord?" But the vision did not end there. Isaiah's gaze was drawn to a detail he hadn't noticed before. He saw blood. The servant's face was covered in blood, but it wasn't just blood. It was flowing from open wounds on his back, as if he had been scourged, punished, publicly humiliated. Isaiah covered his face in despair. My God, what is this? Who would commit such cruelty against an innocent? His heart pounded. The tears fell uncontrollably. And there, alone and rejected on the temple floor, the prophet understood that the pain he carried was only a faint shadow of the pain that this servant would endure. Amid rejection, Isaiah sees a terrifying detail in the vision. Isaiah could not sleep. The images from the last vision haunted him night after night. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw that man's face, the servant, a gaze so full of pain, of rejection, and at the same time of a strange and inexplicable compassion. On a cold morning, Isaiah climbed the same hill where he had prayed so many times before. He knelt with his face to the ground and cried out in agony, "Lord, please, I can't take this anymore. Why do you make me see this?" And once again, as so many times before, the heavens seemed to tear open before him. The vision came, strong and relentless. Isaiah saw the servant, now in greater detail than ever before. The man walked slowly down a narrow street, surrounded by people who looked at him with disdain. Some spat on the ground as he passed. Others shook their heads in disapproval. An inner voice began to narrate in Isaiah's mind, as if God himself were dictating the words. He was despised and rejected by men, a man of sorrows, acquainted with suffering. Isaiah gasped for breath. He saw the servant being pushed, dragged, beaten without mercy. His face was swollen, covered in bruises. His eyes, barely open from so many blows, still conveyed love. How can he look like that?" Isaiah murmured, tears falling uncontrollably, and the voice continued, "Like one from whom men hide their faces. He was despised, and we esteemed him not." Isaiah collapsed to his knees, his whole body trembling. The pain he saw was so real, so intense, it felt as if it pierced his own flesh. Suddenly, the scene shifted. Now the servant was being scourged. Isaiah saw his back, torn, lacerated, bleeding with every lash. "No," cried the prophet, "this is too much, I can't bear it." But the vision continued. The whips fell hard, the skin ripped in strips, blood flowed, mixing with the dust of the road. And yet, the servant did not complain. He did not fight. He did not resist. Why does he accept this?" Isaiah murmured between sobs. And then, as if God himself answered, the sacred voice continued, "Surely he took up our pain and bore our suffering, yet we considered him punished by God, stricken by him, and afflicted." Isaiah, overwhelmed, shook his head, trying to cast out the image, but it remained, unshakable, cruel, real. The vision continued. Now the servant was being led somewhere. Isaiah couldn't see exactly where, but he could hear the sounds of shouting, of mockery, and the distant weeping of women. "But he was pierced for our transgressions. He was crushed for our iniquities," the voice continued. Isaiah felt his strength leave him. His legs gave way, and he collapsed completely to the ground. "Crushed," he whispered, "because of our guilt, our sins." The weight of the revelation was suffocating. Then the final scene of that vision struck him like a blow to the chest. The servant, lying still, his body covered in wounds, eyes closed, lifeless. Isaiah covered his face with his hands and screamed in despair, "Lord, I can't take it anymore. Don't show me anymore. It's too much for me." The wind blew fiercely over the hill. Dry leaves swirled around the prophet lying prostrate. He remained there, motionless, weeping. Jeremiah, who had been searching for him since morning, finally found him. "Isaiah, what happened? Are you all right?" Isaiah lifted his eyes, red, broken, his voice weak, full of desperation. "No, Jeremiah, I'm not. What I saw, what God showed me, I feel I can't bear it anymore." Jeremiah helped him to his feet, but Isaiah knew What he had just witnessed was only the beginning of a far greater suffering. He felt he could endure no more, not knowing this was only the beginning. Isaiah could barely lift himself from the ground after the vision of the wounded and humiliated servant. The images were still etched into his mind with terrifying clarity. The words he had heard echoed like a silent thunder in his heart. Even as he walked home, his legs felt like lead. Each step was dragged forward, as if the weight of all the pain he had witnessed rested upon his shoulders. Jeremiah walked closely behind, watching with deep concern. "Isaiah," he said, gently placing a hand on his shoulder, "ever since that vision, you barely speak, barely sleep. What did you see?" Isaiah stopped, took a deep breath, and replied in a low voice, "Jeremiah, something I can't even explain. It's as if heaven itself wept, as if the judgment I always proclaimed wasn't falling on the guilty, but on someone innocent." That night, Isaiah locked himself in his writing room. He took up his scroll, his inkwell, and began to write, his hands trembling as he poured out what his soul could no longer contain. The words flowed like a river, painful and inevitable. "But he was pierced for our transgressions. He was crushed for our iniquities. The punishment that brought us peace was upon him, and by his wounds we are healed." Isaiah paused. The tears fell unnoticed. The inkwell slipped from his hand, staining the parchment. He took a deep breath, trying to control his emotions. "Pierced," he whispered, "but 'tis how?" He placed a hand over his heart, feeling it tighten. The images returned with force. The servant now bound to something. Isaiah looked closer. Wood, arms stretched out, hands and feet pierced by something he had never seen before. What is this?" he whispered, struggling to comprehend. It was a form of execution Isaiah had never known. No records of such a method existed in his time. It was something cruel, slow, prolonged suffering. The vision continued. The servant hung there, lifeless, his body covered in blood. People around him laughing, mocking, pointing fingers. He was oppressed and afflicted, yet he did not open his mouth. Like a lamb led to the slaughter, and as a sheep before its shearers is silent, so he did not open his mouth. The words came as if God himself whispered them to his heart. Isaiah dropped the quill and covered his face with both hands. "Why, Lord? Why does this man endure all of this without complaint? Why doesn't he defend himself?" he cried in despair. He recalled the trials he had seen in Jerusalem, men screaming, struggling for their lives before the judges. But the servant, he remained silent. How can someone be condemned unjustly and still accept it? The questions pounded in the prophet's mind. In another quick vision, Isaiah saw the servant's body being taken down from that wooden structure. A man gently wrapped him in a cloth, carried him to a new tomb carved into rock. He was assigned a grave with the wicked and with the rich in his death, Isaiah murmured, shocked by the accuracy of the images. The tears returned, now heavier. "It makes no sense!" he shouted, rising abruptly and knocking over scrolls and inkwells. "Why an innocent man? Why must someone so pure suffer like this?" Jeremiah, hearing the shouting, rushed into the room. "Isaiah, what's happening?" Isaiah, with bloodshot eyes and ink-stained cheeks, answered between sobs, "I saw it. I saw every detail. The suffering, the beatings, the nails, the humiliation, the death." Jeremiah remained silent for a moment, stunned. "But why?" he finally asked. Isaiah looked at his friend, his eyes filled with pain and awe. "Jeremiah," he said, his voice low but firm, "it wasn't for his sins. It was for ours. All the guilt, all the pain that was ours was laid upon him." His friend stepped back, as if trying to process those words. "But Isaiah," he stammered, "this is too cruel. No one would do that for a people who rejected him." Isaiah slowly nodded. "No one, except someone sent directly by God, someone with a purpose far beyond our understanding." Silence filled the room. The two stood there motionless, immersed in the weight of that revelation. Isaiah picked up the scroll again and continued to write, even as his hand trembled, though he had done no violence, nor was any deceit in his mouth. He knew that no matter how much pain these words carried, they had to be written. They were words that would outlive generations. Yet as he immersed himself in the images of suffering, something new began to appear at the end of the vision. Something Isaiah could not yet fully grasp, but that left him even more unsettled. He saw a light, something beyond death, a detail that should not exist, something that defied all logic of what he had just witnessed. Isaiah stopped writing, took a deep breath, and whispered to himself with a dazed look, "This is impossible." Isaiah realized he was not just describing suffering, but something unimaginable. Isaiah remained motionless, his eyes fixed on the scroll, his hand still trembling over the wooden table. The images of the servant's suffering, humiliation, and death were far too vivid in his memory, as if he had been present in every moment, feeling every blow, every tear, every muffled groan. But now, something new, something that defied all human logic, began to take shape in his mind. As he tried to finish writing the final lines about the servant's death, a sudden light invaded his vision. It was no ordinary light. It was intense, almost blinding. Isaiah instinctively closed his eyes, yet the scene unfolding before him remained clear, astonishingly clear. He saw the same servant, now alive. "No, this can't be," he whispered, his voice choked. Isaiah opened his eyes wide, as if to erase the vision, but when he closed them again, the image persisted. The servant, the one he had just seen beaten, pierced, dead, was now standing. His face was serene, his eyes full of life. The scars of suffering were still there, but something else had taken their place. Something Isaiah couldn't name, but it made him tremble. A soft voice, like a divine whisper, echoed within him. After the anguish of his soul, he will see the light and be satisfied. Isaiah felt the ground shift beneath his feet. Light? Satisfied? After such suffering? He murmured, covering his face with his hands, trying to contain the storm of emotions. He abruptly rose from the table and began pacing the room. "This is impossible," he repeated. "No one returns from death. No one—" The sound of the door opening interrupted his thoughts. Jeremiah entered, out of breath. "Isaiah! Rumors are spreading. People are gathering, demanding that you stop speaking. They say your words are disturbing everyone." Isaiah, eyes fixed on the floor, responded in a low voice. "Jeremiah, what I've just seen, even I can barely believe it." "What?" Jeremiah stepped closer. Isaiah took a deep breath, as if struggling to organize his thoughts. "I saw life after death. I saw the servant, the one who was crushed, pierced. I saw him standing alive, as if death itself had been defeated." Jeremiah stepped back, startled. "Isaiah, that's impossible." "I know," the prophet replied, tears falling slowly. "But I saw it with these eyes." Isaiah walked to his table, picked up the scroll, and with still trembling hands began to write once more. "And it pleased the Lord to crush him, causing him to suffer. And when he makes his soul an offering for sin, he will see his offspring. He will prolong his days, and the will of the Lord will prosper in his hand." He paused for a moment, reflecting on every word he was writing. "He will prolong his days," he repeated, trying to understand. "Does that mean he will live even after being crushed?" Jeremiah, still in shock, sat down beside him. "Isaiah, do you realize what you're saying? You're writing that a man, a real man, will die and then live again." Isaiah nodded slowly. "That's exactly it. And more." He looked at his friend, his eyes full of awe. "He won't just live again. He will see the reward for his suffering. He will witness the fruit of his sacrifice, as if death didn't have the final word over him." Silence filled the room. Isaiah knew that revealing this to the people would bring even more mockery, more rejection, more pain. Who would believe in a resurrection? Who would accept such an outrageous prophecy? He closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and, still on his knees, whispered a prayer. "Lord, I'm standing at the edge of something my mind cannot grasp. I need understanding. I need your strength. In that moment, as the wind blew gently through the half-open window, Isaiah felt a new conviction begin to grow in his heart. Something great, something too revolutionary to comprehend alone, was being written through his hands. Isaiah knew he was standing at the edge of something far too revolutionary to understand alone. The days in Jerusalem remained heavy, as if the very air carried the weight of Isaiah's prophecies. Each message he announced seemed to tear away a bit more of the people's hope. War, famine, judgment, suffering, everything was unfolding just as he had declared. Yet that morning, upon waking, Isaiah felt something different in his spirit. Sitting at the edge of his bed, he closed his eyes and prayed silently, "Lord, after all I have seen, after all I have heard, is there any hope?" And in that moment, a new vision began to take shape. Isaiah saw fields blooming where there had only been dry land. He saw children playing in the streets without fear. He saw men and women joyfully rebuilding the walls of Jerusalem. Laughter and songs echoed through the city. A gentle voice, almost like a whisper, filled the air. "The Spirit of the Sovereign Lord is upon me, because the Lord has anointed me to bring good news to the brokenhearted. He has sent me to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim liberty to the captives and release from darkness for the prisoners, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor and the day of vengeance of our God, to comfort all who mourn." Isaiah opened his eyes suddenly, his heart pounding. "Hope," he whispered. Without wasting time, he rushed out of his house. He walked through the streets, crossed the city squares, until he reached the temple. There, with a firm and emotional voice, he began to proclaim, "O Jerusalem, O people of Judah, listen, a time of restoration is coming. It won't always be ashes and mourning. There will be comfort for those who weep. There will be freedom for the oppressed." The people, used to Isaiah's harsh messages, looked on in astonishment. Some drew closer, curious. "Isaiah," asked an elderly woman, "are you saying that after everything there is still hope?" Isaiah smiled, his eyes filled with tears. "Yes," he replied with conviction, "after the darkest night the sun rises again. God has not forgotten us." Jeremiah, always by his side, placed a hand on his friend's shoulder. "This is the message you've been waiting for, isn't it?" Isaiah nodded. "God showed me judgment, showed me suffering, but now he shows me redemption, a new beginning, a new chance for all of us." The following days were different. Isaiah was still rejected by some, but for the first time he saw attentive eyes, open hearts, people willing to hear about a better future. He began to record this new vision with special care, to bestow on those who mourn in Zion a crown instead of ashes, the oil of joy instead of mourning, a garment of praise instead of a spirit of despair. They will be called oaks of righteousness, a planting of the Lord for the display of his splendor. As he wrote, tears ran down his face, but this time they were not of pain, they were of hope. Jeremiah watched him from a distance and said to another friend, "I've never seen Isaiah so determined, so full of life." Yet even with all this renewed energy, something still unsettled the prophet's heart. There was a detail, a piece of the puzzle that remained hidden. As much as he spoke of restoration and hope, Isaiah felt that the final purpose, the deepest answer to all the visions, had not yet been fully revealed. That night, as the cold wind rustled the curtains in his home, Isaiah knelt once again, alone. "Lord, you have shown me the pain, the judgment, the redemption, but I feel there is more, much more, something that ties it all together, something that will give meaning to every word I've written." He remained there for hours, waiting in silence. Fatigue overcame him, and Isaiah fell asleep right there on the floor. But in his dreams, a new light began to rise on the horizon of his mind, something great, terrifying, and at the same time, glorious. But the final revelation, the true answer to the question, why is the book of Isaiah the most astonishing in the Bible, was still to come. Isaiah awoke still on his knees, his face resting on the stone floor. The dawn slowly crept into his small home, casting golden beams of light through the cracks in the window. His body ached, his knees were bruised, but there was a different kind of peace, and at the same time, a tension in the air he had never felt before. He stood up slowly, washed his face, took a deep breath, and with trembling hands, picked up a new scroll. Something in his spirit compelled him. The words came with overwhelming urgency. Isaiah closed his eyes. The visions returned, but this time everything seemed to make sense. He saw the servant, saw the unlikely birth from a virgin. He saw the child grow, full of wisdom, bringing comfort to the afflicted, healing to the sick, freedom to the oppressed. He also saw the scorn, the betrayal, the suffering, the death, and then life emerging where there had only been death. Isaiah opened his eyes, tears streaming down his face. "My God," he whispered, voice breaking, "everything points to him. Everything I saw, every word I declared. It's about one single man, one single Savior." Jeremiah rushed into the room, calling out to him, "Isaiah, are you okay? You look pale." Isaiah looked at him with eyes shining, as if seeing beyond what human eyes could perceive. "Jeremiah, I understand now. I finally understand." "Understand what?" Isaiah took a deep breath and answered, a mix of emotion and awe in his voice. "All the visions, every word of judgment, every promise of redemption, every image of suffering and glory, it all points to the Messiah, the servant, Emmanuel, the Prince of Peace. They are all him, one man, one plan, one Savior." Jeremiah stood in silence, stunned. "But, Isaiah, how can that be? You're speaking of things that will happen centuries from now. How can you be so certain?" Isaiah picked up the scroll and, with a firm voice, recited, "He shall see the fruit of the travail of his soul and be satisfied. By his knowledge, my righteous servant shall justify many, for he shall bear their iniquities." The prophet set down the pen, his eyes brimming with tears as he looked at his friend. "I am writing the gospel itself, even before it happens." Jeremiah dropped into a seat, speechless. "This is unbelievable," he muttered. Isaiah continued, "The nations will see him. Kings will shut their mouths because of him. He will be exalted, lifted up, and greatly glorified. But before that, he will be rejected, pierced, crushed for us." Isaiah rose, walked to the window, and gazed at the horizon. "I don't understand all the details, Jeremiah, but I know one thing. One day, when this servant comes, he will fulfill everything God has shown me, every word, every tear, every promise." His friend, still in shock, asked in a low voice, "And the people, Isaiah, will they believe?" Isaiah smiled, his expression a blend of pain and hope. "Some will, others won't. But when it all happens, when every prophecy is fulfilled, the whole world will know." He closed his eyes, breathed deeply, and with his gaze fixed on the heavens, declared aloud, "For the Lord of hosts has spoken, and his word never fails." At that moment, a deep certainty filled Isaiah's heart. He had been chosen to record the greatest plan in the history of humanity, a plan that would only be fully understood centuries later, but which was beginning right there, in each line, in every prophecy flowing from his mouth. And now, as he finished writing, Isaiah set down the pen, took a deep breath, and smiled with tear-filled eyes. "And now, do you understand why the book of Isaiah is the most astonishing book in the Bible? The revelation might just shock you. When Isaiah finished his prophecies, he may not have fully grasped the magnitude of what he was leaving to the world. He was just a man, with his doubts, his fears, his tears, but also with a courage that few possess. A man who chose to obey, even when everyone around him rejected him. A man who, even without fully understanding, kept writing, kept speaking, kept prophesying. Today, when we look at the pages of the book of Isaiah, we don't see mere ancient texts or poetic words. We see a prophetic map, a timeline stretching across centuries, pointing directly to the coming of the Messiah, Jesus Christ. Every detail described, from the virgin birth to the brutal suffering, from rejection to resurrection, was fulfilled with a precision that defies all human logic. And what about the prophecies yet to be fulfilled? Isaiah also spoke of the second coming, the glorious return, a kingdom of eternal peace where there will be no more death, nor sorrow, nor crying, nor pain. Isaiah 25:8. Isaiah's words are an invitation, a call for you to choose to trust just as he did, even in the face of rejection, to proclaim hope, even amid crisis, to believe in God's promises, even when everything around you screams the opposite. If Isaiah, centuries before Christ, could see so clearly what we would only come to understand much later, imagine what God can still reveal to you today. And so, the question that echoes into our time is simple yet powerful. What about you? Are you ready to live with the same faith and courage as Isaiah? Are you ready to believe that just as every word from that time was fulfilled, God's promises for your life will also come true? The book of Isaiah is not just history. It is living testimony that God speaks. And when he speaks, nothing can stop his word from being fulfilled. Rise, believe, proclaim, because the same God who called Isaiah is calling you today. If you enjoyed this story, 2 more videos featuring equally inspiring biblical characters will now appear on your screen. Click, watch, subscribe to the channel, and leave a like. May God speak to you, just as he spoke to Isaiah in the most unexpected moments.